first questions for you is there a significant issue within Midland's community that Midland Police are trying to address?
You know, I guess the easiest way to say it is we're the same as every small town in Ontario, and similar in some ways to most cities in that drugs are a major problem, because the drugs that we have today, as you know, you probably have more education about that than I do, but the drugs we have today are instantly addictive, and people can't kick them. And when people can't kick a habit, and those habits are expensive, that means they have to turn to crime. And when they turn to crime, it eventually leads to violence, right? So you get somebody, for example, a simple way, you're addicted to a strong drug, you don't have the money to buy it, you go out and do a break and enter. You don't do enough break and enter, so you do a robbery. Robbery is violence, someone gets hurt, and that's the crime we deal with. So we have some of that. Our robberies are actually fairly low in our community, we have very few of them. So we're lucky that way. And our drug process, I think because people get identified easier. So if we're in a group of 5 people and one of us is stoned, we're going to know, right? We're all going to know that who the stoned one is, right? Right. If you're in a group of 5,000 people, the chance of you knowing whether or not someone's on drugs or not is very limited. So in big cities, sometimes people get lost. In a small community, it's sometimes easier to identify and say, that person's having a problem, how do we get them some help? Right. So that's the one change. So basically our problems are drugs. Everything spins off of that drug and alcohol. Driving while under the influence of drugs or alcohol spins off of all of that. So substance abuse is the number one issue. The other issue in our community is mental health. We have the Penetang Machine Mental Health Center right next door. I think it's being renamed soon, or has been. That's a detention center as well. No, that's your Central North Correction Center. But yeah, sorry, Penetang Mental Health Center also has a forensic ward where people convicted of homicides and things who have some serious problems go there as well. You're right, from a long-term capacity. But because of the closeness to that facility, oftentimes people will go there and are then released to the community. We're the closest community with apartments and things that they can set people up with, and we end up with a high population of people, partially as a result of that. And we're a low-income area. I think you look at our university attendance in the townships of Tay and Penetang next door. I try to keep my handle on that. We're much lower than the provincial average. Midland might be just slightly below average, but Penetang Machine, and where I live right next door in Tay Township, is quite low. Plus the distance, right? The distance you are from a university or college impacts whether or not you attend.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
So that
Is there like a targeted area that that Midland Police, or I guess even OPP, if you guys work jointly together, is there a certain area that you're trying to concentrate your efforts on?
Not really. I mean, when you say focus our efforts, the efforts are drugs, and drugs are everywhere. So you're limited. So what you find is a drug house will pop up from time to time, but they pop up everywhere. They pop up in affluent communities where someone's renting a basement or something. They pop up in lower income areas. So they pop up everywhere. You do tend to focus on areas, so for example, we'll do a study or a review, and actually one officer is just doing that right now, doing a little analytical work, where most recent break-and-enters, what was taken, what left the community, so therefore what might be their next target area. Are they looking for higher-end items? Are they looking for lower-end items? Where might they go? And based on that, we will focus our patrol zones or patrol officers in that area, right? Okay. But as far as the overall impact or the overall sort of focus, the focus is primarily on drugs for us in a small community, which in turn includes break-and-enters, which in turn includes the impaired driving.
It's kind of like the gateway into the crime system.
Absolutely. It is the gateway for everything.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the other areas we focus on are community areas the community is concerned about. So getting away from drugs.
I just want to go back to the drugs. Are these marijuana grow-ups in the area, or just more serious?
There are marijuana grow-ups, absolutely, because they pop up everywhere. On top of buildings here, we did one, just a small number of plants, 17, 18 plants on top of an apartment building just not long ago. So they pop up all the time, but I'm more interested in the ones where they'll go get cocaine, crack, ecstasy, things like that. They'll drive to Toronto or Barrie, wherever their midway point is. They'll meet up, they'll bring a bunch of dope into town, drugs, and they'll sell them probably within 15, 20 minutes. The difficulty with marijuana, though, is because it's so acceptable. It's like alcohol. And people will smoke a few joints and then go drive. not realizing that they're so hampered in their driving, right? So that's the biggest difficulty with marijuana, but certainly our concern is with the heavier drugs, our primary concern.
Okay, my next question, what is the major crime that you find in Midland, the most major one that you have, that you're always dealing with?
And if you could tie it down to, do you find it more being committed by younger offenders, like youths, maybe between the ages of like 18 to 25, or is it more like
Or
a
younger.
elderly?
Mid-age.
You know, it's funny, it's changed so much. I would say years ago, that probably our biggest problem was bar fights and things like that. Like as far as a police officer and what you dealt with regularly, is people getting drunk and fighting. And, well, the bar scene's changed, right? You can't drink and drive anymore. You can't even have a beer hardly without being over the limit, right? And so that scene's really died off. Like if you take Midland, when I started here, there were 10 or 15 bars in town. There really is only one bar left, and the rest are restaurants,
Yes.
like Kelsey's, Boston Pizza, that have that bar element a little
yeah,
bit, but they're also a family restaurant. They're not just a bar, right?
Bar, yeah.
So that's changed. I would say, you're talking criminal activity?
Yes.
It's thefts associated to buying drugs.
Oh, okay.
So the thefts are probably the one that we're dealing with the most. On top of that, yes, we deal with the regular things, the domestics, the people suffering from mental illness that are suffering in our community and have episodes where they get into conflict with other people. But I would say theft is probably the biggest. Is that generally males between 16 to 25 kind of? Yeah. Biggest addicts or most hardcore drug users are the people probably in their 40s.
Do you implement any kind of organized groups with the Midland Police? For instance, you're using the Toronto Police Service's TAVIS program
Right.
in general. So do you have anything that are you planning on implementing or have implemented such a program maybe in Midland?
No, I guess the easiest way is to talk about we have 27 officers.
Yeah.
And what we do is we divide them up into five platoon groups. So you have 4 officers per platoon. And then we have a criminal investigation branch. And the criminal investigations branch has 5 people. And so what we do is, we're 4, 8, 12, 16. The idea of this is that these people are basically used as rovers or to fill in the spots when guys are hurt and sick and to help with the CIB unit. But what you'll see are, what we're moving towards is we now have more bodies back, because we had a few people injured, is 4 people on a platoon and 5 people in criminal investigations and 3 people that we use for special projects. So these people, this 5 officer unit looks after drug investigation, criminal investigation, follow-up to break-and-enters and things like that. And these 4 groups of 4 just do call response. And then they assist these other groups whenever they're doing any kind of major drug project or things like that. Okay? And the other 3 we use for traffic enforcement, for filling in spots.
That's perfect
Stuff.
These officers do participate in drug lectures and assist and do speaking. One of these officers, one of these 3, also does community service, so they're pretty much a full-time community service officer. We do have members that sit on different groups. For example, we sit on the homeless committees. Some of the homeless people are also some of our people who suffer from mental illness and drug addictions. So we sit actually on those committees and work with them whenever they're doing projects. We'll become involved. We sit on the end of the coal program. In a small town like Midland, we don't have a full-time shelter, so we wouldn't have a men's shelter. We do have a women's shelter for domestic violence or women in need, but not a men's. So we actually functionally sit on those committees and are part of any projects that they're working.
So do you have a lot of civilian volunteers that come out and help the Midland Police and work along with the officers?
We're probably not an organization that utilizes volunteers as
One.
Well, Chief Osborne, we appreciate your time. Is there any questions or any feedback that you'd like to address us with?
No, I had I just made some notes actually about half an hour before you came. I sat down and I was actually just printing this off when you guys came in. But I just wanted to make sure you got the idea when you were talking about community policing, is that I don't ever want to leave people with the idea that it's some kind of program, as I mentioned to you already. I really look at it as being a frame of mind. And for us, it's a conscious effort to be involved in the community, to support the community activities, to adapt your service to the needs and desires of the citizens, and treat everyone with dignity and respect.